Is there a doctor in the house?
Doctor, you have a visitor in the main lobby.
Hello, and welcome to today's The Doc Podcast, the show that aims to help executives educate themselves more in technology and business decisions that surround it. I'm your host, Steve, the Dr. Meek, and the Doctor is in. I'll be helping you through this visit with my usual fun banter and bedside manner, so hopefully that's not too distracting. Today's topic is designed to help leaders hire like a professional, and I brought in an expert today, David Russell. He's the strategic account manager from Blackpoint Cyber, and we have a great show for you. So in this episode, just to kind of give you a little bit of an idea, David brings some many years and all kinds of HR skill sets. He recently joined a fast-growing cybersecurity company, Blackpoint Cyber, and I think it was pretty excited to engage with some of their top-notch senior executives. I mean, this guy, he's authored or co-authored like 5 books. He's created over 100 lessons on business soft skills. And wow, he's like hosted over 300 podcasts himself. In our pre-interview, he kind of said he was mentoring the organization on culture, quality service, delivery practices, how to systematically hire without increasing your costs. So I thought that would be an awesome topic for all of our small business type organizations and owners. So welcome, David. Thanks for coming in to talk to the doc. How are you doing today?
Hey, I'm doing good, Doc. I mean, it's like typical thing. You go to the doctor and you feel fine. So I'm with you. I feel fine.
All I can say is diet, rub some lotion on it, take a few pills, and we'll kind of figure that all out. But we're going to spend a little bit of the next hour together. So I'll take a few vitals from you. We'll go through our full appointment at the end. We'll just kind of talk it out. What do you think?
All right. Sounds good.
Okay. So give me the pulse. Just like a doctor's appointment, I guess I kind of want to know what's kind of the current state of the market, or what are some of the industry trends that you're running into?
Well, I think the industry trends are pretty much consistent. Year to year, they go up and down a little bit. But I saw something in Harvard Business Review recently. They listed like the 10 most costliest problems at companies. And number one was hiring the wrong person. And they estimated it cost $9,800 a day when you take into account all the lost opportunities that person may create, the way they affect other staff, clients, whatever it might be. I don't know all their criteria.
How much was that again?
What?
How much? What was that number again?
It's so high. It's $9,800 a day.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Fortunately, I've never made a bad hire. No one I know has ever made a bad hire. So that doesn't personally affect me. But I was just kind of curious for everybody else out there who may have made a bad hire. 9,800 a day. That's an incredible number.
And of course, I'm giving you an extreme number, but there's a lot of numbers that are way up there. And so I like to say, if you make a bad hire, it's going to cost you at least $10,000. It's probably going to cost you $50,000 if you keep them 30 to 90 days. I don't care what they're being paid. Just based on the distraction, hiring the person, trying to get them going, how they interact with other people. Gallup came out with a stat just in the last few months, I think, where they said 82% of hiring decisions made by companies are the wrong person.
Wow.
8 out of 10. Now, I don't know how they define right person and wrong person. Maybe like the right person is, that superstar headliner player or the solid role player on your team that, they're just marching at the same beat. But they said 82% of our hiring decisions end up being the wrong person.
Yeah, I think about, kind of a smaller organization, my organization included, and you make a hire, you go through a whole bunch of effort to get someone on board. And sometimes there's that reluctance to pull the trigger, like, hey, maybe I can make this work and all this other stuff. But, sometimes in reality, you're thinking, oh man, I don't want to go through all that again of, reviewing, 50 resumes, sifting it down to 5 or 10, having interviews, all those kinds of things. I think smaller organizations we can be of that feeling of reluctance to pull the trigger and just part ways and move on.
Well, that's the other thing. You convince yourself it's easier to keep that person on your team than to, get rid of them and replace them. I talk about, Steve, there's 4 management disciplines. Okay. It's the way you hire, you manage, develop, and then retain people. And, a lot of people just convince themselves, it's just easier. I'll put up with this. They'll get better, or they keep putting it off. And I'm not talking for weeks. I know you're very disciplined. I mean, you're a doctor. You have to be disciplined. Right. Systematic, checklist. But people aren't always that disciplined. And I've talked to people, they have people on their team, been there a year or more, poor performing, not meeting their standards. Everybody else on your team knows what's going on. And it just lowers the standards for everybody. That's a separate discussion. I don't know whether you want to stay on hiring or shift over to some of these other areas, but.
Yeah. We can hop onto that. We can always re-explore it. I know that, we kind of do some surveys and kind of compare ourselves against similar types of organizations. And over my years of doing internal company surveys, it's been amazing to me the number of times you've had your own internal team members say something like, there's somebody on our team. Everybody knows their name. They're not pulling their weight. Why don't we just get rid of them? It's great to do surveys and we appreciate all the feedback, but it's sad that it gets to the point of where other people in the organization have to point it out to you or remind you that, hey, you've got this bar for us. You're expecting this for us. This person isn't there. Why are you tolerating that? And, sometimes out of the mouth of babes, really comes the truth. But let's talk a little bit about heart rate. We've been talking about, the hiring, the world of hiring, but let's talk about performance metrics. What's top of mind for you? In your current role, you've been brought in to kind of help drive culture and some of those kinds of things. What kind of metrics tell the story for you?
Well, so, for 19 years, I ran Manage to Win. And we have an amazing hiring system that we teach, hire the best. And I created that system because, quite frankly, Steve, I had a company that was a .com, went .bomb, and I made a hiring mistake that cost $1.5 million.
Wow.
That's literally what it cost. Now, not worthy going into the details. And I realized when I came out of that .bomb that I had leadership attributes, but limited skills or no skills. And my big flaw was I was not systematic. So I was just like, okay, what's my system for leadership? And then, it all starts with hiring to a certain extent. You start with culture, purpose, but then if I get the right people on my team, then I have to manage, develop, retain them. But if I get the right people on, that makes a world of difference. And I realized that I was really haphazard. I was making hiring decisions based on a hoped for outcome versus the facts. I was one of those guys that there was actually a study done years ago that said that too many managers make a hiring decision in the first 3 or 4 minutes of the interview. And it was like 78% make a decision. And there was another study done recently where they had, I think, I don't know how many people they interviewed, but what they did was they had one group go through and interview these candidates thoroughly, go through every step. And then they had this group of college students, didn't have any hiring training. And they only got to see the first 15 seconds of the first interview. Mm-hmm. And they would make a decision, this person's somebody to hire or not. And what they were trying to understand was, do these thoroughly trained people on how to hire, supposedly thoroughly trained, on supposedly a good system, are they making a decision too early and then adapting their hiring process based on that early decision? And 100%, the college students called it who got hired and who didn't get hired.
Really?
Which proved their thesis, at least based on sampling. I don't think it was a huge sampling. Might have been 50 50 people or something, but based on the sampling, that these people who thought they were good at hiring were actually making an early decision and then adapting the conversations with the candidates to where they wanted that decision to go. Pretty scary.
Yeah. Yeah, I think sometimes people want to hire people like themselves. Honestly, I think that's what's happened with, so I'm a big Dallas Mavericks fan, as you might be able to tell. And, we recently parted ways with Luka, and I finally have stopped crying myself to sleep every night. But I really think that was some of that Nico wanted to hire someone like himself, and I don't want to get too off tangent with it. But, Luka was not like Nico. Just completely different things, but, a generational guy, completely different. And, he kind of fell into that. Hey, I want all my guys to be guys I believe can win, which means they need to kind of have my same mentality, kind of a thing. But I don't want to go too far for that other than to say, I think our first big impact on an organization, especially a small organization, is who we choose to hire.
Your people that interact with the players that are trying out for your team, not candidates, our hiring coaches. One of the things we talk about is that, if you remember, what's his name? He's the coach of the Miami Heat. Famous.
Spolstra?
No.
Spolstra?
No.
The GM now.
Yeah, probably the GM now.
Yeah, I think he used to coach the Lakers. I should know his name.
That's right. No, great guy, but he talked about fishing for whales. And so one of the things we talk about is when you go fishing for whales, there's three outcomes. You've got the wrong whale. So it's like you're searching for somebody like you're talking about who is a great player. He's a whale. He can make a difference, but he's the wrong whale for your team.
Okay.
He's not going to fit into the culture. He's not going to mesh with existing players. Or it might be wrong time. We tell a story in Hire the Best of one guy who was brought into the Lakers and was a disaster. He was supposed to make a big difference. Okay. He came back like 6 years later. He was more mature. The organization had changed a little bit. And they went out and won 2 NBA championships, in part because this guy was part of the team. So you've got wrong whale, you got wrong time, and then you got right whale, where you do align that, like when the Golden State Warriors got Kevin Durant. He was the right whale at the right time, filled the gap, and they immediately go out and win 2 or 3 championships. So you have to really think about not only who is this person, how do they fit our culture, how do they fit the role, but how are they going to mesh with our existing team?
Yeah, that's always tough for a smaller organization. You don't have a full front office who's dedicated to it. You don't have, even as a hiring manager, once you reach 10, 15, 20 people in the organization, up to 100 or more, it's kind of hard to have all of that effort and time until you do have those dedicated roles to kind of help you through that.
Yeah, but I think you can, if you break it into bite-sized chunks. So we talk about there's 3 phases in hiring. It's how you attract great players to try out for your team. It's how you assess them, and then how you add them to your organization. And if you get systematic about it, in Hire the Best, we have these tools. We have scorecards to use when you're assessing people, and anybody can learn how to do it well. And then when you put together your hiring team, who's going to be involved in that decision, they can hold each other accountable and they can try to see things that other people don't see. But, it's funny. I'm an optimist. One of the toughest things for me to learn in hiring has been to see the yellow flags and not just run past them.
Right.
Because I'm hoping, this person will work out. Then I can get back to my other stuff. I don't do that anymore.
Yeah. Now, in kind of the post-COVID world, one of the things we ran into in our market and in our industry was during our assess phase, we used to have a much longer assessment period. And sometimes we were only on the back end of step 1 when our participant was getting offers from other organizations that had much shorter things. Are you finding that just kind of given things now that assessment period is expanding again back to where it should be?
Well, and so you talk about where it should be. Like you can follow Hire the Best and make a hiring decision that's good in a week.
Okay.
All right. It's really, I think it's the longer time frame can be helpful. You can put more. So I talk about there's 2 things that are absolutely mandatory There's a third I like you to do, but two things are absolutely mandatory. The number one for me is you have to do what we call scrimmages. You can call it a test drive.
Okay.
And you and I've talked about this before, where you make a decision, somebody's great, or beforehand you even start to do this. You start throwing real life scenarios at them, or you put real work at them, and you see how they do. And we have some partners, some people have implemented our system, and they'll hire somebody for a day, pay them as a contractor, put them in real work, and see how they do. How do they respond to challenges? How do they interact with other people? How do they talk to customers? Anytime during the day, if it's going sideways, they can say, sorry, not working out. But It has proven to be really, really good. So that's number one. You've got to do that no matter what time frame. And the second thing is you got to do a background check. So there's a lot of posers out there today.
Yeah, we have to do that through the FBI anyway, since we call on local government. We have to put them through a full FBI background check, get fingerprinted, all of those kinds of things. So, that's already kind of been baked into us for a few years. But I get that, not every organization makes doing a background check part of their routine.
Oh, yeah. And I believe, which you probably do, you got to include a civil court check. And in California, where I live, you can't make a hiring decision based on civil court results. So if they're suing their neighbor or their past employer or vice versa, you can't make that the reason you're not going to hire them. But I say, well, don't you want to know that?
Yeah.
So those are the two things that are mandatory. I also believe you should do one of our managed to win talent assessments, because those really confirm the person. What are their behaviors, their habits? What's driving them? What's their maturity in 25 soft skills? And then you can incorporate that into the interview, and you can ask them questions about, what they highlighted and aspects of their profile to confirm, okay, is this really the player that's going to fit our culture and our role? But let me go back to your question. What about timeframes expanding? So we recommend you do a thorough resume evaluation. We have a resume scorecard. Then if they pass the resume scan, you immediately jump to the next scorecard, which is an online scorecard. You look online at social media. Who is this person? How do they behave? And then if that goes well, you go back and you finish the resume scorecard. They pass those, you do a screen. That's the first interview. We recommend it's online because you're going to schedule maybe 45 minutes. But if it goes sideways early on, then you can end it easier if it's a video screen. By the way, we say you have to have no virtual background. You have to have a video camera and no virtual background.
Oh, that's good to know. I'm glad I didn't have a virtual background today. I didn't want to fail, in case this is an interview or anything like that. So dodged a bullet. See, that's the power of the doctor. Sometimes things just work out, because
that's right. You're disciplined.
10,000 hours of thinking about things.
Yeah, and the screen, by the way, Steve, a lot of people with the screen, they do that as a touchy-feely. Mm-hmm. Let's see if we like you. No. The screen is you're looking to confirm hard information. So one of my first three questions is, what are your compensation requirements? There are so many companies that do not ask that until way down the process. And if they want to make $120,000 and our budget is $60,000, we're both wasting our time.
Sure.
So we get difficult questions on the table in the screen, not to put them on the spot, but hey, we have to realize hiring is not just about us. When we waste someone's time in the hiring process or we hire them and it doesn't work out, we've done them a disservice. We've taken them out of the job market. They may have missed out on a great opportunity that they would have liked to pursue. So that's why we try to get it out there in the screen. And then we go to a technical. Typically do a hard skills type of test, interactions, typical scenarios, asking technical questions, whatever it might be. And then the third and final of the core workouts are face-to-face. That has to do with their mindset. So that's where we dive in there.
The things that you talked about, about fit, that's one of the things that I've loved about your profiles. So in our industry, in a lot of cases, we gauge things based on technical skill, based on soft skills, those kinds of things. But one of the biggest values that I feel that I've gotten out of your profiles, the DISC profile kind of tells a little bit about their personality and behavioral skills and stuff. But it helps us find fit. It helps us not just find someone who we feel is going to be a fit for our organization, but feels like we're getting the right person in the right seat because, guys who like building, who like architecting, who like designing networks have completely different skill sets from those that are good at supporting people, being, troubleshooting, going in and, work with someone over and over again who might be non-technical. And so throughout our organization, there's like little clusters for different types of engineers, and they could both have the same technical skill, but it's kind of in a different way. And so that's why we've used your profiles in the past is that's been extremely helpful for us because we feel very positive that I'm getting someone into a role that's their comfort zone. They're going to feel comfortable doing this day after day after day, week after week, month after month, year after year, as opposed to having to change who they are to kind of, yes, they've got the technical skill, but they're not good at doing pre-implementation documentation. They're not good at doing those things that an architect would do versus service and support versus, another role, dealing with cybersecurity or whatever it happens to be. They're all different kinds of skill sets beyond just the technical on the surface.
Oh, yeah. And then I know David's team has worked with us on salespeople, which is a totally different animal. And then you got your back office folks, which have their nuances. And then the fact that it's not just the behaviors, but you can connect with, okay, what's driving you in a workplace and how intense is that? Some people are not intense at all.
Right.
And other people are major intense. And it really helps to know that. And then with the triple perspective, you look at those 25 soft skills. And just to warn people, that's 125 questions to figure out those 25 soft skills, the maturity in them, and understand, which one of these relate to the role? And do we want to think about one habit that you want to develop to take one of these that's a strength and make it even stronger, make it into a superpower, or one of these that needs improvement and maybe we need to work on one habit there so it doesn't hurt you, it doesn't hold you back. And so, yeah, very helpful in all the different roles, but it also helps in the hiring process because, as you know, they highlight statements that best describe them and you get them out of their hire me script. So everybody that comes in and interviews, well, everybody's trying to be their best. Not everybody succeeds.
Right.
But they have a certain script. They're prepared. And I love it when somebody says to me, oh, wow, that's a good question, because they weren't expecting it. And then I'm thinking, okay, now I'm going to learn something. And that's why we like to ask questions about either their profile or statements they've highlighted or crossed off as saying, hey, this isn't me. Oh, that's interesting. You crossed that off. Why? And I get to hear a story that I wouldn't hear otherwise.
So I guess I like your sports analogy earlier for the hiring process. So I guess kind of based on what you've told me so far, how should an organization treat hiring, or what's the thing that you're driving towards there?
Good point. So I think first of all, you've really got to figure out what's your culture. We actually talk about that even in Hire the Best. You got to know your why. Why should someone join your team? So, you look, one of the comparisons we do in Hire the Best, we compare the Miami Heat to the Golden State Warriors. And the way they describe their teams are like polar opposites, but they're both champions.
Right.
Those two teams in the last 20 years, I think the Heat has gone to the finals 7 times and the Warriors have gone 6 times, at least when we ran the numbers. But they have totally different cultures. I mean, Pat Riley, that's the name of the Heat's coach. And Riley describes his team. He starts off with something pretty eloquent, like the most professional, blah, blah, blah. And then he says the grittiest, nastiest, meanest team on the planet. And it's like, whoa. And the Warriors are like, yeah, we're having a fun time and we're, competitive. Yeah. And we're music filled.
And you can kind of see it on the court, just when you see the huddles and kind of how they're going through it. Spoelstra is kind of a nuts and bolts, methodical. Here's how we're going to do it. And you see Kerr just kind of going, hey, let's have fun. Go out, shoot your shot, put it up. Sometimes he rolls his eyes when Steph does something and then it goes in. He does his hands up. But you can tell that he's a much looser empowerment kinds of coach where Ulster is more old school, kind of holding everyone accountable and everybody playing 2 ways and those kinds of things. And, it's kind of amazing the parallels between sports and our organizations, whatever they happen to be, government, nonprofit, small business. We all have a lot of similarities with, performance management.
Yeah, and most people can't do either culture. One of my favorite players on the Warriors, who used to be recently retired, Andre Iguodala, he won some championship rings with the Warriors, and then he went to the Heat, and he's like, whoa, what is this? But by the time he left, he was quoted as saying, hey, if I ever run a team, I'm taking 95% of what I learned here. Most people can't do that. So the answer to your question is that first on the hiring system, it's super important because who you get on your team is important, but you can't get the right people until you define your culture. Really, what are you most passionate about? What's the purpose? And speak about your culture there, Doc. I mean, I know you guys have a really solid culture and you've been around a long time. Where are your passions and your purpose that's that magnet for the right type of people?
We've got our core values, which are all over the place. We really strive to live and breathe our core values. From when we catch somebody doing something right, typically we'll reference the core value that they're embracing in that. When we each month we kind of select a core value hero, somebody who goes up there at the end of the year. We kind of give out a bonus to certain core value winners throughout the year. So, whether it's, working as a team, inspiring client confidence, holding yourself accountable, all the different core values that we have. I think it's important to have them, breathe them, live them, talk about them all the time. And, the best feeling in the world is when you have your associates quoting the core values and saying things from it. Yeah. And I just read a book. My business coach had recommended it to me, The Captain's Chair. And the whole point of the book is it tries to identify statistically what were the best teams ever. And this isn't, this isn't like a Michael Jordan 3 wins in a row. This is like 5-6 seasons of superior play and just completely dominating, and a legacy of 10 years or 7 years of over the top play kinds of things. And what they came away with is, it wasn't the coaching, it wasn't the star player, it wasn't the organization. Each of those organizations had a glue guy. They typically weren't the best player. They typically weren't the most biggest personality or the most flamboyant. They didn't need to be in front of everybody, but they were the guy behind the scenes that made sure everybody else was accountable. That guy in your organization who, when people are screwing up, it's not a management thing. Somebody goes, hey, look, this is the way we do it. You need to hop on board or get the heck out of here, or, we'll do whatever, having that kind of a glue guy, that glue person within an organization. And I think of that because of how you mentioned Iguodala, during that run with the Warriors. I think that's the reason he got that, the MVP during the playoffs wasn't so much because of his defense on LeBron was great, but I think it was that locker room presence that, hey guys, here's what we need to be doing. Hey, I'm a longtime player. This is how we need to work out. Hey, I'm, that guy behind the scenes who is more than the front office, more than the coach, but that trusted voice within the organization that you just kind of fall in line and do, kind of do those things. And, I think culture drives that. Culture has to attract those glue guys, those glue kinds of people. But those are the kinds of people who mean a lot to the organization, but you don't always see them. Maybe they're not the top producer, maybe they're not what you would consider the most vocal person, but sometimes it's those quiet guys who don't say a lot, but, when they speak, it speaks volumes.
Yeah. And, I think you brought up a really good point, several good points. First of all, you can't have a strong culture unless you have accountability and you're living it out. So I talk about there's 4 company culture cornerstones. There's your mission statement, why you're in business, your vision, where you're going to go or grow, your values, how you do business. Everybody knows those, but they don't think, the 4th cornerstone. And without that one, the building falls over. It's accountability. And you guys are living it out. So you're constantly talking about it. As you say, your players bring it up to you. When Iguodala was on the Warriors, I like their superstars and they all seem like nice guys, but he was my favorite. And I loved it that he got the MVP award as a role player, not as a headlining superstar who was racking up the most points. And I don't know him personally, but the impression you had, and I still have, is that he's just a great guy and he's got some humility. And so you love that. So the culture piece is really important. Now, once you nail that down, and you really can't hire the right people unless you really have nailed the culture.
So nailing the culture down, top thing for organizations.
You've really got to nail that down. And whatever your core group is, whether you're by yourself, whether you've got 2 or 5 people, you got to nail that down. And I recommend however many people you have in your team, you get them involved. So you don't just announce, you don't bring down the tablets from the mountain like Moses did. All right. But you get them involved. And so you may bring a draft, but you still get them involved. You have open discussion. The second thing you've got to do is you got to define the role. And we use what we call SPs, strategic plans, employee strategic plans. So a job description is pretty dead. A strategic plan lays out what are the goals or targets I want this person to achieve. And we do them quarterly now. Quarterly strategic plan, just update them.
Really? Okay.
But clear, measurable objectives that are time bound. They're not all due at the end of the quarter. Are there any career path objectives that the person's pursuing? And then on the front page, we put, what are the 3 most important priorities in this role that this person needs to do? So that's the front page. Second page is, hey, we don't want any misunderstandings. So we encourage people, manager and direct report, to exchange written expectations on behaviors. There's 1, 2, or 3 areas for each of them. They're weighted for importance. But hey, I want you to, the team member might say, I need you to be available when I'm stuck. I want you to mentor me. I want you to keep me growing in my career, whatever it might be. But don't assume these things. Get them on the table. And the third piece is the culture piece. So we recommend you put in there your mission, your vision, your values. The fourth piece is the role. What's the role? And it's an adapted job description because we recommend you take the role and divide it into 2 or 3 weighted areas for importance of what are the key responsibilities, not every little thing. And then what are the development priorities for this role? And then the second last page are the qualifications. Those are in general. They may not be for the individual. The individual may have different experience. This still makes them qualified. And the last pages are the key graphs, 4 key graphs from our Manage to Win talent assessment to remind you, hey, here's this person's most intense behaviors, their driving forces, and where they are on these soft skills. So you can be aware of that, or the individual can. And so if you have a strong culture and you have that role really well defined, then you can go out and find the right whales. And you may not want whales. I mean, you only want so many whales, but you're going to want your role players. You're going to find you're going to be able to match with them really well. And we recommend you use that SP as part of the hiring process. So you bring it out and you got somebody who's made it past the screen. Then at the end of the screen or the end of the second core workout, you give them the SP and you say, okay, here it is. I want you to write your expectations for me as your future boss. This is what I'm expecting of you. These are the targets we've laid out for you, goals, rocks, whatever you want to call them. And do you think any of those should be changed? Do you think anything should change in the role? This is your opportunity. This is a strategic plan for your success. And you brought that up before during COVID. You're trying to interview somebody, you're interested in them, and bingo, they're gone. Okay? You get them involved in a strategic plan, they're going to say, wow, nobody ever did this for me before. These guys really got it together. I got to wait it out to see how the rest of this interview process goes.
Sure. Yeah, when kind of like you said earlier, no one's asked me that before. When people see things that they've never had the opportunity to experience for another organization, then they start to become, curious like George and, hey, I don't know what this is, but this is making me wonder what else is there. What would I be getting by coming to work for that organization?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And it's funny. It's funny, what you said about the strategic plans going quarterly. We've just started. So we're a scaling up shop, but, whether you're scaling up or traction or whatever, you've got your rocks and metrics and other things. We've been trying to figure out how to combine those together. And unfortunately, we've been using Microsoft's Viva goals for that, which they deprecated, went end of life. So I'm a little PO about that, but don't get me started. But started trying to incorporate some of that quarterly rhythm with the long-term aspect to have more definitive stuff for our team, because, in the IT industry, if you're not growing, if you're not getting better, you're falling behind. The pace of learning, the pace of transition, the pace of change. It's so incredible. I love the fact that I get up every morning And it's like I'm looking at a completely different landscape that I got to navigate and get to. It's like a lifetime video game where I'm trying to figure out, where I'm at within this space.
No, I think it's very helpful. The quarterly is really good. The first page of the strategic plan, we recommend the manager and their direct reports look at that every week. It takes 2 minutes. Okay, let's talk about, are you on track with your goals, your targets, rocks, whatever? Okay, do you need any help on any of these? Bingo. And then the person knows they're getting that, because I'm an advocate for weekly one-on-ones. Mm-hmm. At the very least, bi-weekly. Some people can't do weekly, but no less than bi-weekly. I mean, some people said, Steve, you've talked to your partners, your peers. Some people set these objectives, quarterly objectives, or even annual, and they don't even talk about them again until the end of the quarter or the end of the year. It just doesn't work.
Yeah, it was like early on, I remember I had one person whose goal was or one of my managers had a person whose goal was to learn this new tool. And so we get to the end of the quarter, he still hadn't learned it. And so his manager said, well, he kind of fell behind and, wasn't able to get to it and blah, blah, blah. And so I got them both together and was asking them, so show me what you have learned in the tool. And so he's like, well, actually, I don't even know how to log in. I'm like, how do we get to the end of a quarter? You're supposed to learn a tool and you still haven't even logged in. There's a disconnect between what those two people thought of falling behind and keeping somebody on track and stuff. And that was a different conversation. But, I think, kind of to your point, you can't just let the one-on-ones be these perfunctory gatherings where things aren't accomplished. You actually have to dig into them, embrace them, be more timely so that you don't get at the end of the quarter and, hey, we missed our target again. Hey, we missed our target again. Hey, we missed our target again, which can happen.
Yeah. And, in that situation, which I'm sure you would agree, that's a leadership issue. And I'll be candid with the audience. I've been there. Okay. I mean, been there, done that. Don't want to go back again. And so these short meetings, we actually have developed what we call a map agenda, because we talk about everything's a target. So it's a targeted destination. You're going from point A to point B. You need a map to get there. And this just is a way that we consolidated what you and I have talked about before, that I was inspired by Lee Iacocca when he was turning around Chrysler Corporation every Sunday night, had dinner with the family, then went into a study, spent 2 hours. He looked at, okay, what were my priorities this past week? How did I do? What do I need to do this week to keep the company afloat? And out of that came his plan. So we do metrics using the MAP acronym. Metrics are the past. What did I commit to? How did I do? A is actions. Okay, what are the actions that I think I need to do right now? That's present. And then, okay, what's my plan for this next time frame? It can be a day, it can be a week, it can be a quarter, whatever, but you follow that MAP acronym. It works for any kind of meeting. And
that's awesome.
Because once again, if you don't have the accountability piece on the front end, then you're just jumping to the new shiny object, particularly with technical things, whether it's an implementation and, oh, we got this fire, we got to fight, or a tech support calls or priorities, you can forget about the tickets that get older. I know you guys don't, you stay on top of it, but less organized organizations, they'll have tickets trail. I've seen it too often.
Well, it sounds like you put a lot of study in this, a lot of research, spent thousands of hours on it, put together comprehensive programs with checklists and stuff. So it sounds like you really want to give all that away for free to anybody who's listening to this podcast. But if that's not the case, how does a manager help his HR personnel kind of create that hiring process with the leadership team? How do they get their own internal people started and kind of crafting some of the things that you've done on their own?
Yeah, as you mentioned, I'm full-time now with Blackpoint Cyber. I do have a team at Manage to Win, still doing those things. If you go on Manage to Win, you can link on to Hire the Best, or you can go to hirethebest.co. There's a free 20-question SWOT survey that you can do. They offer a $500 full-blown SWOT. That'll confirm where your gaps are in the system. And usually people need some coaching for 1 to 3 months to get rolling. We are working on coming out with a self-service Hire the Best system with pre-recorded lessons. We're about 25 lessons are done so far with that. Okay. Ton of sample documents. And for your audience, if they're interested, we have our triple assessment. is $319. You do the assessment, you get a summary of, what the person highlights as best describes me, and you get a playbook on how to work well with the individual. And if they would like to try one of those, my team will give them one for free.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, for nice. $319 for free. Just email info@managetoWin.com. They'll get you one. But if there's any questions that come up, I'm doing all my time. Somebody on my team can help them out with the hiring system. But my main encouragement would be just, you got to be systematic in hiring.
Sure.
That's how you're building your organization. And you don't want to think, okay, I got this person in, take a few steps forward, and then it's not working. You can't. It's tough to have a winning season then.
Well, every week I make up a new reason of how I earned the nickname the Doctor. And one of the reasons early on was because I got a checklist for everything. And I used to joke that I even have a checklist for how to go to the bathroom. That there's once I start down something, I want to not just do it the right way, but the best way. So each time I want to add to it and do it better. And it's to the level where I presented my wife a checklist for the grocery store, and it's got like different sections mapped out with the most common things that we eat, where she can just check it off. And she's like, what's this? Kind of a thing. And so it's tough when not everybody is like you, but I do like to systematize things, build checklists, establish best practices. And that's one of the reasons for the nickname, the Doctor. The other one obviously was because of my basketball prowess on the court. People saw my lack of a crossover and said, yep, that's just like 1980s basketball. So we'll start calling Steve the Doctor. So two of the stories of how I got my nickname of the Doctor.
Well, that is a great example, because the two examples I've heard most often about the power of checklists are with surgeons and with airline pilots. So they've got to do a checklist before they start. What they're doing is just too important. There's lives at stake. And so I think it's very appropriate.
And honestly, that's part of my appreciation for what physicians do, for what doctors do, is there's a very structured process that they go through every single time. And it's definitely frustrating to have them ask you the same questions multiple times, even though it's in the system and stuff. But there's like a specific thing that they go through to kind of double check in an order of things. They don't just bring you in and start giving you medications. Well, I guess some could be, but usually they're getting those vitals like we did at the call. And just like this podcast, structured after it starts with, hey, let's get some information to understand what's going on. Let's ask a whole bunch of questions and talk about it. And then when we get to the end, we'll kind of try and figure out which way we're going with this and what we need to do next and go from there. But, that's really interesting. That's the third reason for the Doctor is, a lot of what we do follows that same structure of, query, back and forth answers before coming up with a decision on what we need to do. You can't just make a guess on what needs to happen. Like, what sometimes happens in IT, people who are solving problems just try what worked last time and then try something else and then try something else, or just call Google. And, there's actually a very defined structure for how you should do most things, technology. Now, what about for organizations that don't have, like any kind of HR? Maybe there's one person who's a principal and his job is HR. How does he take some of what you said and get started with coming up with kind of your sports related practice of a hiring structure?
Well, I think it's the same thing, is that it's even in some ways it's more important when you're really small, because each hire is a big investment. If nothing else, it's a big investment in time if you've got tons of money. But most solopreneurs or small organizations don't have gobs of money. And so each hiring, decision is very important. So I think it's all the more, it puts the emphasis on, you got to get the right people on your team. And so you've got to be systematic. It's the only way to do it. In this system, I've proven it over 20 years. So in 2001, I made my bad hiring decision. February 2003, I had my epiphany that I had leadership attributes, but no skills. And that's when I started working on it. So it's been 20 plus years since I developed Hire the Best. And it's really fine-tuned, really validated. And if you're systematic, it's not that hard. It takes, there's a speed bump to get it implemented. But once you've got it implemented, then You just follow the system and work the system, and it works.
Now, with all those years, I joke that I know so much because I screwed up so much over the years and always remember the lesson. But after 20 years, what would you say, like some of the pitfalls or challenges or things that organizations should be mindful of along that journey?
Yeah, it's funny you say that because in February 2003, I had a sales job, was in a hotel in Texas. Well, I don't remember what part of Texas, red carpet, and I was face down crying, praying out to God, like, what am I doing? I'm a mess. My mind went silent and I got a prompting. It just said, go help people avoid your mistakes. So it's similar to what you say. I've made plenty of mistakes. I just want to help you avoid my mistakes. What would I say that they should do? I think that if I were doing it again, I would start by sending an email to info@managetoWin.com and do an assessment, a free assessment on myself, because everything I do is going to come from who I am and how well I understand who I am and where I am right now in my journey in life. I would do that first, and they get the full-blown thing, and including a debrief. So it's actually worth like $500, which is what we charge for the debrief. And then from there, I would decide whether to do the SWOT, the 20-question SWOT, or to dive in a little bit deeper, maybe month by month for a month to 3 months to say, hey, I want to implement this thing. And I would say that most companies depending on how much mentoring you want, in 1 to 3 months, you can get the snowball off the top of the hill and get your hiring system going. And then you decide how much fine tuning you want. We have actually a current MSP who's helping us out on the coaching, who, he's got, I don't know how many years business experience, 20, 30 years, but he's a solid guy, not a sales guy. He's an analytical, like the doctor. You'd like him. Massive introvert. I think he's on the I scale. He's like a 4, something like that.
Oh, wow.
He's a self-avowed nerd. And, but he would help people just, step by step, not selling anything. But I think the simple thing is get something that's free, get the assessment, see what you think. And then if you want to take the next step, you choose between either the 20-question assessment, or I think they will throw in the full-blown 100-question assessment if you sign up for 1 month of some coaching. So you can decide whether you want to do that, or you just think, oh, I learned a little bit of myself. I'm going to keep going on my merry way. But I just encourage you've got to have a solid hiring system. Otherwise, you're going to make the wrong decisions. By the way, I divorced my first wife back in 2018. I was in the marriage for 40 years. I tried my hardest. I really did. Mm-hmm. 2 years later, I met a wonderful woman, and I told her about 3 weeks into it, it's just like, hey, I'm an expert in hiring, and I'm going to apply my system for how we're dating because I'd like to court you. And, and she laughed. She thought it was hysterical. But I actually followed that. This hiring system works in relationships. You not only learn how to hire better people, but in friendships, in relationships, when you go and join a nonprofit board, you can kind of figure out who you're dealing with, and other relationships. It's very helpful across all areas of your life.
Interesting. Yeah, I guess, as I keep burning years on this earth, I kind of started noting this interrelatedness between different things in different areas, just like your analogy of, how sports parallels, what business owners go through that, there are certain things that work because of the flow, because of the analysis done, because of the trend, because of whatever. And, it's interesting that you do that. I do kind of see what you're saying here of, if it's important for everything to be driven by the culture, first, whoever the top executive is or that key leader, manager, whatever, needs to know who they are, how they think, how they represent, what they're after, all of those kinds of things before you can figure out the culture, before you can figure out the hiring system, before you can avoid that $9,800 mistake that you don't want happening on a day-to-day basis. So, I kind of see the train of thought there and how those all connect to each other.
Yeah. I mean, I've had failures. I've made mistakes. But if I'm going to be fair, in every one of the situations where I've made a mistake, I don't do it as much with my successes because I prefer more of a team credit approach. But when it comes to mistakes, I have a saying, Steve, that if there's 100% of a problem and 1% is my mistake, like I told you something, Steve, but I used the wrong tone of voice. I got to own that 1% so I can learn from it.
Sure.
So, you've got to understand yourself. You're going to invest a ton of time in your business, and you got to understand how you are affecting the outcome of that business. And that's a lifelong journey. That's not turning on a light bulb. But if you can take a quantum leap forward and make some progress, make a major turn, then that can be extremely helpful. That's life-changing.
And in breaking down my love of checklist, I see it exactly the same way. A checklist is scrutinizing the most important steps for success every single time I do it. It's if you want to use the Pareto principle, the 80-20 rule, hey, here's my checklist of things that I need to make sure a server implementation goes right every single time. Over time, something's going to prove it wrong. So, I need to add a step, or maybe I'm wasting time on this step, or maybe we can automate this step. So, I think we've got kind of simpatico brains, and maybe we're related somehow that we don't know about. Maybe we served in Her Majesty's forces in India together in a previous life. I don't know.
All right. That would be great. I love it.
Well, I guess last question that I kind of had for you, just, kind of what's going on today. When you look at HR, staffing, things right now, what should small organizations be worried about? Kind of the minimum wage increase, workforce planning, organizations are trying to right size. We've been doing things around mental health, just kind of employee well-being. Remote work is always on everybody's mind, talent retention. What of kind of some of those different areas, one of those or something else that you think is kind of a trend that small organizations need to be mindful of?
Well, I hope I'm not being too general, but in number one, which is not my thing, is you got to make certain you're compliant with the laws. So just structure things however you need to do that. So you're going to be compliant. So you don't have to think about it. And you've got your checklists. Okay. Super important, because you don't want an oops there. Secondly, I will give you what I feel is one of the greatest challenges, biggest challenges that leaders have. And that is you've got to really sit back and put people first. So that means you don't look at, when I talked about the MAP agenda, when you look at your metrics, what metrics do you have in there from the past week or the past day or the past quarter, past month, whatever, that are talking about, okay, did I meet one-on-one with everybody on my team? What did I do I talk about compliments. You got to say you're attaboys, but if you want to touch their heart, you want it to stick for a longer period of time. If I say, hey, Steve, I saw how you were out last night till 2 a.m. fixing that server. When everybody else was in bed, you were covering it for us, man. And I really appreciate what you did. I checked. That thing's running flawlessly today. So thank you so much. That's going to stay with you. So how am I really engaged versus giving lip service to growing my people, developing them? Soft skills as well as hard skills. And so I find that if you focus and your culture is strong enough where you really make people your priority, relationships the priority, then a lot of the other stuff goes away. So if you hire the right people and you make those people your priority, you're not going to have to deal with too much on the mental health side. Some stuff you're going to automatically be doing because people are the priority. Okay. But you're going to do it in a balanced way. And I don't mean to pick on that, but that's where I find leaders get too caught up in stuff, task work.
We do.
Yeah.
Now, we talked about a lot of stuff. I appreciate all your time today, but, as a doctor, I got to pin you down for the after visit summary. I got to think about, out of all of the stuff that we talked about, what's the one takeaway? What's the home run for organizations that they should take out of our conversation today?
I think the home run is that hiring needs to be systematic, based on facts, not on feelings. You do need to listen to your gut because it may identify something that's a problem that you're not paying attention to. But your hiring has to be systematic through how you're attracting people, how you're assessing, which is a problem right now. You got all these resume bots and all this other stuff going on, crazy AI stuff. So how you're attracting them, how you're assessing them or qualifying them, okay? And then how you add them. I mean, you may do a great job. You attracted great people. you assess them properly. You got the right person. And the first day they show up on the job, they don't really have a computer that's working. Their chair has an arm busted off and, nothing's ready for them. That's not a good experience. And I'm not talking about just the first day. How are those first 90 days? And then they're on. So you've got to be systematic if you want to win championships.
Yeah. You never get a chance to make a second impression as an organization. When, if you show up on that first day and, after 20, if you're as old as we obviously are, not hiding anything unless we get a better camera filter. But, over the years, we've all shown up to that one job where the guy's like, oh, I didn't know, I wasn't expecting you today. It's like things don't really get better after that. I think I showed up to one job and they said, oh, you're starting today. You know what? Go into the back room. There's a whole bunch of computer parts. Put together a computer for yourself and then come see me about noon, so we can get started. And it was like, oh, so you're just killing time, until you can free something up for me. But it doesn't leave you feeling much better.
Yeah.
Now, as prescriptions, I think you mentioned you had a couple of links that we'll put in the show notes, some free stuff that they can get at and, kind of get started. Some other things if they want to dig a little bit deeper, if they need a little bit of help. Anything else, technology tool or process that, you depend on or would recommend?
I don't I don't recommend a lot of technology. There's a huge amount of options.
Whoa. Let's not get crazy, David. Come on now.
I mean, except for Blackpoint Cyber for your cybersecurity, you guys are a great partner of Blackpoint Cyber. But I would say only one comment, I guess, with that. I use OneNote to keep notes on every one-on-one meeting I have.
Okay, nice.
And I just keep that going. So the most recent meeting is at the top. I just write down the key things. If it's appropriate, the other person has access to that, or my team has access to that. If I'm discussing confidential information, they do not.
Oh, sharing the OneNote with them. I like it.
Yeah. And so I use OneNote. There's a lot of other tools you could use, but I love OneNote for that purpose. It's not perfect, but it's very simple for me to use, track, and share. And so because remember, I talked about accountability. So when I meet with that person the next time, I need my list. And at the top of my notes is, what's the homework? What's that person supposed to do? What am I supposed to do?
Yeah, I think that's a great point out of the one-on-one, that it can't be you just get together and hang out and talk about stuff and then come back and go, hey, did you get it all done? After the one-on-one, you got to make sure that, hey, we've got the same list that we're looking at. I'm expecting this of you, and you know what's expected of you. So, so it's a little bit easier to get to the destination if you both have the same map.
Exactly. And I recommend that if you're not sharing the notes, that the team member emails their boss what the homework is.
Okay. Yeah.
Because then you're going to confirm they understand it, and they understand it the way we discussed it. Whereas if the boss always does it, then you can get nodding head syndrome. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I got it. And they go off and do something else, or they don't hit the time frame or whatever.
Awesome. Great advice. I love it. Now, after the call, we'll have some of your links and stuff, but is there anything else you want to tell us about how people can reach you, phone number, email, social media, website? Anything else you want to throw in there?
If they use that email of info@manage2win.com, and it's a 2 in the Manage to Win, my team will take care of you. If it's a Blackpoint Cyber thing, it's drussell@blackpointcyber.com. But they're going to talk to you about cybersecurity, not me. But if they just feel for some reason they really want to pick my brain, reach out to me at Blackpoint Cyber. And I'm happy to have a short phone call, see if I could be of any help. I love to help people. And I'm on LinkedIn, so they can get a hold of me there if they want to. But, I just wish everybody the best. So let's all get along. Let's have some fun while we're living, right?
That's great. You are a total optimist. I see it. Now, for myself, you can always reach me via email, thedoctor@fulcrumgroup.net, route straight to me. So you can also find me on LinkedIn. I'll make sure and put my links in the show notes. And we're just getting started, but be sure to like, follow, comment, or whatever on our stuff. Right now, we're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and iHeartRadio. And then we've got a few more coming out soon. So look for us there. Look for what's next. And David, any last thoughts?
No, just thanks a lot for having me on the show. So, Steve, you built a fine organization. I've worked with you guys for 15 or more years and just have tremendous respect for you. So thank you very much for having me on. Glad I could share some things I've learned.
Well, same here. I wouldn't invite you if I didn't like some of the stuff we've done together. So, I appreciate that. And that's all I have for today. So hopefully you guys got some tidbits from this and you can take away some stuff for yourselves. But at this point, all I can say is the doctor is out. See you next time. Take care.